Wow, I thought it was going to go again. That was exciting. Wow.
Well, the video is good enough to be repeated.
It was very good. I like it. All right, well, let's get going then. So welcome to episode 17 of In the Hot Seat. For our repeat viewers, you probably never saw that clip before because that's the first time we've used it. But thanks for joining us again, and you get to see that cute clip every time from now on. If you're new to the show, we do this every 2 weeks. We put an industry expert or customers in the hot seat for lively discussion, debate, even a little bit of discourse as we humanize the digital experience. All aspects of the customer life cycle are up for discussion, as well as technologies used throughout each phase of the journey. And note to the folks that are on LinkedIn, if you have any issues, sometimes it reboots and just plays us in a really short loop, which might be interesting to you, but I suspect you'd probably want to hear the rest of the show eventually. So if you do, jump over to YouTube or Facebook if you're having issues. This is the first episode in an 8-part series. So, and maybe more, I guess we haven't really decided if we're going to end at 8 or not, because we have so many good ideas about the impact of organizational culture on the customer experience. So welcome.
Yeah. Welcome from my side as well. And today, it's actually really about culture and capitalism, right? So we have lots of stuff that we read about, especially culture in terms of capitalism in the past months.
Yeah.
There's recession or not, with impacts on people or not.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting because it's kind of this is an interesting discussion in the context of everything that's been going on too, right, Thomas? I mean, I know you sent the BT article, which we should probably talk about, and then I also was looking around at this somewhat depressing TechCrunch article that summarizes all the layoffs this year, and it looks like, I mean, if you look at the months, it's like 85,000 in January, 36 in February, 37 in March. April is like 18,000. So I mean, it's been a rough several months in the tech industry from a layoff perspective, and then obviously that has, as we know, impacts downstream, not just the people that are impacted by the layoff, but the customers and the rest of the people that are left too. So definitely timely to talk a bit about what companies could do that are different. So I'm curious what you think about that BT article, though. That one was pretty. I mean, it was kind of Diginomic and normal because I like the sarcasm, but interesting.
So I had a brief interaction with Stuart and I think John on Twitter with it. So it was still a level about eviscerating, which would have been the next one. So it's basically about them saying, okay, so now we got this great new AI. AI is everywhere, and well, those fiber cables the fiber wires are all laid out. We don't need customer service anymore because, well, the AI does it for us, and hence we are happy to lay off 10K people.
Yeah, 10,000.
While getting even better. No, well, the even is probably, looking at the article, quite ironic. Not iconic, but ironic.
So definitely not iconic. But I mean, unless you need a good example of what not to do when it comes to AI and jumping on a popular bandwagon, maybe.
Yeah, that's really part of it. So the bandwagon probably needs a horse that's in front of it.
and that horse is not ChatGPT, by the way.
No, probably not. Probably not. And this is
well, I mean, it's pretty complicated when you look at around the whole issues, and I know some of us have been a bit taken aback by the way some of these layoffs were presented and the way the business has been treated, and then on the opposite end, I've been really impressed by some. I mean, like Eric Yuan and at Zoom, his layoff announcement I thought was very humble and on target. It's interesting to hear an executive actually take responsibility, and I feel like that's what's missing a lot in some of these announcements is nobody taking responsibility. So
and on top of that, they all talk about how valuable their employees are to them. They are family in one company. Another company calls them members. So this Well, they're family till they are not, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, I guess they're a family that you don't invite to Thanksgiving anymore.
Yeah.
All right.
The
Well,
good,
why don't we go shift to the guest, and let's get into this, because I'm excited
yes,
today. I think this
yeah,
is going to be a fun conversation with a company that
indeed,
you and I both are very fond of. So I don't
yeah,
know. Take it away there, Thomas.
yeah, yeah. Well, so let's bring on Raju Vegesna. Raju Vegesna is the evangelist of Zoho. He, the chief evangelist, so not only the only one, but the face. So as such, he plays a leading role in presenting Zoho and Zoho's messaging in the business market, and that worldwide. Right now, he's in Peru, by the way. Apart from that, with being at Zoho for 20 plus years right now, so he's hundreds of other different responsibilities. He's basically everywhere in this company. And one core responsibility is being the head of Zoho in North America. Well, welcome, Raju.
No, thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you
welcome,
for
Raju.
having me.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Great for you to be here. Really excited.
Yeah.
You know, one of the things that might be useful, Thomas, is for Raju to give us a bit before we jump into the capitalism questions, because it gets pretty heavy as we get down this list, I think. But maybe you could just give us a quick overview of Zoho and kind of how we got here and set up the conversation that we're going to have.
Sure. First, thank you for having me. Zoho, we're a technology company. We started from humble beginnings 27 years ago. 6 people coming together, trying to create something, not having an idea on what that something is, and then trying to figure out a way around it. And think of it like one step at a time, going up the ladder. You make progress, and then go to the next step and the next step. And as you make progress, you take the learnings, you build up convictions, you build up teams, you take whatever you make out of those profits, invest back into the company, and keep repeating it and bootstrapping our way to where we are now. So we are about 27 years in. We're a global company now, about 12,000 employees. We have 100 plus products across our portfolio of brands. We do operate in 25 plus countries and over 500,000 customers. So close to 100 million users. So it's growing, but in an organic way. I think that's Zoho in a nutshell. End of the day, it's about good old way of bootstrapping a company.
Yeah, in a nutshell, and that's actually a very good start into it, because I mean Zoho is a capitalist company. We are talking capitalism here, yet you have a different stance on capitalism. So, question: what? I load the question. Why do you think that capitalism is sick?
I mean, assuming that he thinks that capitalism is sick.
Well, I think it has become that way if you consider one aspect of capitalism. So it has become more financialism rather than capitalism. To define capitalism, you got to define capital. Actually, even before we define what it is, end of the day, capitalism is a system. It's a system to improve the society, quality of life of the society, improve the prosperity of people around. Right? That is a system. Now, there are several such systems available, and capitalism is one such system. And I personally am a believer in capitalism. But then, how do you define that capital? We look at capital as capability of people coming together. That includes several aspects. Capital includes human capital. Capital includes, the cultural capital. Capital includes the social capital. It includes various forms. When people come together collectively with shared experiences, with shared knowledge, or building that knowledge, and with tools, and with systems, with culture, all of these aspects are capital. So you build that capital, and remember, finance or money is only one form of capital. But there are other aspects of it that are not as straightforward, that are not measurable. So we tend to ignore the rest and pick the ones that are measurable, right? And this happens throughout. We as humans are or gravitate towards the ones that are measurable.
Yep.
Like take education for that matter. Knowledge is useful, education is useful, but then you try to go with the numeric representation of education, like grades and marks and whatnot, and then you, over a period of time, you value the marks more than the knowledge itself. The same thing is happening in capitalism, where the other aspect, the unmeasurable aspects of capital, the passion, the fire in the belly, the culture of a company, which are not really measurable. So we tend to ignore those and gravitate towards the ones that are measurable, where you put a number in there, something like a market capitalization or things like that, and try to measure against that measurable aspect and value that. And over a period of time, over a course of decades, you see the tail wagging the dog. And that's what we are seeing now. And we believe in the true value of the capital, which is, and obviously the human capital being the most useful of all, and most important of all. And that has to be developed and created and whatnot. So if you look at capital, and if you define capital from a broader, that heterogeneous aspect of it, which is not necessarily measurable, we truly believe in capitalism.
Raju, it's interesting to to hear a bit more about Zoho's culture, and obviously I've known you guys for quite a while, and I think over the last 6 months I've watched other tech companies go through activist investors and lots of unpredictability in the public markets, and of course we all, if you've done startups in the tech world, that VCs and private equity push you hard around growth, and it's almost gotten to the point, I feel like, over the last 6 months, that a lot of companies have come out and said, we just care about growth at all costs. I mean, I'm paraphrasing a bit, but I'm just curious, like, Zoho's freedom from that pressure in some ways has helped shape your culture. So can you talk about that a little bit? How does your lack of that type of pressure give you the opportunity to have a culture that's somewhat different?
I think, if you look at the last few decades, I think it was in 1970s, Milton Friedman defined, the purpose of existence of a company is to generate shareholder value or whatnot. We completely disagree with that. That's a wrong way of approaching it, right? You got to build up the capital or whatnot. And a lot of companies tend to go down that path. Shareholder value becomes the prime responsibility. In other words, the customer of a company becomes the investor. So if your customer is the investor, every quarter you show results. And if you don't, you're out. And that can be shown. So which means you try to maximize the representation of a capital, which is a market cap or performance or revenue or whatnot. And then that erodes the fundamental capital itself. That is the human capital and all of that. If you prioritize the representation of a capital, which is financial numbers. So when investors pressure the management, they obviously want to please their customers, which are the investors, and keep going up. If they don't, they're out. They're out quickly. And if you look at the last, say, 50 years, for example, in 1970s, average tenure of a CEO used to be about 12 years, 15 years. Now the average tenure is 6 years. It's cut in half. Similarly, the longevity of the companies, it used to be about, I think 25 years, 25 to 30 years is the longevity of the lifespan of a company, about 50 years back. Fast forward now, it's about 16, 17, 18 on there. What's happening during the process is we're prioritizing the financial value, and in the process, we are eroding the real capital. The real capital is being eroded. And that is resulting in, at some point, the management is pushed off. So I think not prioritizing the investors, in our case, not taking those investors gives us that freedom where we can focus on serving the real customers, which are the customers that are paying us, and not the investors. And we get to prioritize it, and in the process we develop the capital, create the capital, and invest, keep grooming that. And that's the key part. So that's where the freedom of our independence can also be seen in longevity of companies. There are private companies tend to stick around for long because of that freedom. You're not running. You're not on a treadmill every quarter, and that constantly increase the speed. At some point, you're going to fall down, and that is shown in the shortened lifespan of, say, S&P 500 companies in the last, say, 50 years.
Yeah.
So not having that pressure, helps us focus on what matters.
Well, it seems like part of that's balance too. I mean, you define this by talking about all the stakeholders. Yet we often only define it by talking about the growth and the capital. So, I mean, do you think that's a part of it? Is it just this idea of balance versus imbalance when you approach the shareholders?
Yeah, it is a balance versus imbalance, and you try to optimize it for the shareholder, not the broader system itself. If you look at capitalism as a system, you're trying to improve the prosperity of a community or a society. Then what are you doing as a company, and what is the purpose of a company, and what are you doing, and making sure that society as a whole, not some pocket, society as a whole is prospering. If you're not looking at it holistically, then you get income inequalities to whatnot, because you're operating in pockets. You have to look at it as a whole and see where the capital is accumulated, where it's not going, where you have to build that capital, and that should determine, where you set up your investment, where you build the capital with your investments in there, including building up, developing capital, developing people, developing know-how and whatnot. And that's how we look at it.
Okay, you said something interesting a bit earlier, like Friedman is wrong. This is the short version of what you said. So if the purpose of a business is not making money, which is the translation of what you said, what is it then?
Money is the fuel. Fuel you need to get
purpose,
is the purpose. Is the purpose you get to the destination. Your destination is not your gas station. So but what Friedman is saying is essentially that, which we disagree with. Now, the purpose of each company varies, and at least I can talk about the purpose of our company. Right, we want to improve the livelihood and the society where we are participating in. So that is the reason you will see us going into areas that are untouched, that do not have the capability, and invest there. I mean, end of the day, how do you improve the society or a community? You improve by raising productivity. How do you raise the productivity? By increasing and improving the know-how of building something that is more valuable than what you currently produce. How do you do that? You do that with building, with education, with building the know-how, with building the tools, with building infrastructure, set up systems in place, and do all of that and keep investing in it. And then you produce something of value. Then you're raised the productivity of that particular group, of that particular region or a community, and then now you improve the quality of life of the surrounding people as well. That is how we are looking at it, and that is the reason you see us setting up offices in small towns where the productivity is low. And can we build the capital there and improve the productivity? In turn, improves the lives of various communities out there. That is the broader purpose. To do that, you need fuel and revenue growth or whatnot. If the revenue grows, obviously it gives us more opportunity to invest in a lot more communities and a lot more areas or whatnot. That's the broader purpose of the company. And that purpose may not be in line with, say, a different company's purpose, which is perfectly fine. Each company defines their purpose. But then I think today majority of the company's purpose is basically going to the gas station, which is not appealing for us.
Got another follow-up for that. So, well, we know you guys, yeah. So, and as for me, so if you are saying me, so there's a broader purpose to help society, to be non-extractive, to grow by improving the ecosystem around you. So nearly every other company representative or of other companies, if they say that, I say, yeah, right. So this is probably the same for people who don't know you yet. So why or how can you demonstrate them, or do you demonstrate these skeptic people, maybe even cynic people, that you are different?
That's a good question. There's a difference between capturing capital versus creating capital. A lot of companies try to capture capital, but with Zoho, we try to create capital. And there's a big difference here.
Yeah.
That is the reason you'll see a lot of tech companies setting up in Bay Area, because there is talent available out there, and you can quickly create your product and go to market. And what you see a lot of these companies is they're capturing the capital and trying to translate that into a financial capital and extract more out of it. What we see with Zoho is create capital, where can we create talent and educate talent, create know-how in areas that is completely ignored. 27 years back, when we started in India, there was no software product company out of India. That knowledge did not exist. We had office here in US, but we did not set out to create the product out of US, because there are other pockets in there that did not know how to even create software. So we had to invest in creating that. If you look at all of our investments, whether we creating a product, creating meeting tools, creating email hosting systems, creating our data centers, or releasing a browser, we did not bring in an existing person that has experience in there, or put together a team that with significant experience and try to launch something. But actually, we went through and fell our way, making every single mistakes, and eventually figuring out how to do things. And we are trying to build that experience, the collective experience together, to create that capital. So the difference is capital creation versus capital capture. And where are you doing it also matters. Are you doing it in communities that that have lower productivity, and are you making a positive impact in that community? End of the day, if you are able to produce something good, then you're improving the quality of life within that community. And we have seen these in various companies out there, even in US, that have been doing it, before the financial form of capitalism took over. Look at, say, the glasses that we see in US, right? Majority of these glass companies come from either Merlin or Anderson or Marvin. These are two companies that have been around for 100+ years. And if you look at the companies, they set it up in small towns in there. In those small towns, they are the only employer. They have been doing it for a long time. Because of their success, the community significantly, and the quality of life in the community significantly improved. So there are several such examples out there where a company can exist, raising the quality of life of the community that they're part of.
So Raju, I mean, obviously, like I said, I'm familiar with several of the programs and the way you guys have done things, but I want to see. So I think this is an exciting conversation. Can we tie this down now to the experience of both how you treat your employees and what in your philosophy and culture around that, and then how that translates out into the customer base and how you build that customer experience? I mean, can we focus a little bit on that and just kind of help the audience understand how that plays out in a company with the kind of culture and philosophy that you have?
Sure. End of the day, it is the people that is the heart of the company. And investment in people for a continued, for a long periods of time, and letting them blossom is the key. Initially, when we find some people, it's like converting a stone to a diamond, and there are a lot of people out there that exist, and we in the process are trying to help them discover their full self, and we are helping them discover as well. And then there is a broader goal. When employees are comfortable with the broader mission, employees want to be around. And number two, when the company is investing in the employees want to invest in the company. It's a bidirectional relation, and the trust also goes trust is bidirectional. When, say, the company times are not good, and if the company lets employees go, well, when times are good, the employees will let the company go, right? So again, trust is bidirectional. When these elements are intact, then it's about the longevity or whatnot. I mean, thinking back, I joined the company about 23 years back. So I basically spent over half my life in the company. So is it a work life or is it a life's work? There's a key thing. And majority of the people that have gone through this journey, it's actually, it becomes life's work. And you see that symbiotic relation keep going over a period of time. And when the people look at it as their life's work, the attitude towards the company changes, attitude towards the work changes, attitude towards the customers changes. So if you're enjoying what you do, then you will enjoy the people you're working with and the customers you're working with. So if you keep, if you have happy employees, obviously that will translate into the happy customers, because customers and employees are two sides of the same coin, and these are extremely related. So we need to make sure that if the corollary is true. If you have a customer problem, that means you also have an employee problem. So that's an important aspect where in our case, we have a lot of passionate employee who believe in our broader mission, what we're trying to do. Who like the investments that we make in employees blossom, and they reciprocate that with the trust in the company and doing their job well. And customers see those benefits, partners see the benefits, and the ecosystem sees those benefits.
And I mean, inside companies, obviously, each culture drives decision making in different ways. And I suspect, and you shared some of how you do this with me before, but I suspect that a big part of the empowerment and success that you've seen with customers is related to how you make decisions inside the company. So I'm curious if you could explain the decision-making process and model inside of Zoho, and then how perhaps that does affect and impact the customers.
Yeah, I mean, take something like customer support. One thing I noticed, a lot of companies simply outsource customer support. That's a huge no-no in the company. No, customers, you're there to support them. There's no outsourcing customer support. It is part of the value we offer, right? Something like that. The second aspect is, in the modern world, you see a lot of people saying, "Hey, you're leaving money on the table." You'll see that salespeople make that case a lot. Actually, yes, we want to leave money on the table. That's a feature, not a bug. Now, why is it good for the customer that you're extracting a lot more from them, lot more than you need from them? Because you want them to succeed so that you will succeed in the future. Why should you extract every penny that is available out there? So that is another thought process out there. So similarly, because we do not have that constant growth pressure from the investors, we basically get to plan for the long run. So which means we don't have the quarterly numbers to show, which means we don't have to increase the prices whenever we think we can, or trap customers into long-term contracts. So we actually don't think about it. And it is weird that customers come to us and say, "Can you do a 1-year contract or a 2-year contract?" It is the customers asking us, because they are used to so that they're afraid that we'll increase the prices. We know we won't. But they want to. They know that they're getting good price, and they want to lock that into a contract. I mean, if they are the ones demanding, we don't have an issue. But generally, it is the customers asking for it. But we don't trap those into these terms and conditions and hidden courses or whatnot. So the thought process is pretty straightforward. Can we deliver value to the customer? And can we keep delivering value for an extended period of time? We have customers who have been with us for 10 years as well as 20 years. So it's good to see that. And these are, say, few examples on the thought process when we make it. And it is the freedom of not having investors on our back that allows us to make such decisions and prioritize the right customers, that is our real customers and not investors.
Now, if you, what you basically say is that there is quite some localized decision making or distributed decision making, which likely ties back to culture, or needs to tie back to culture, because Zoho is a growing company. Luckily, you are successful, means you are bringing in new people. New people bring in new ideas. That changes culture. So how do you make sure that these distributed decision-making stays within an evolving culture instead of endangering this culture?
Yeah, I mean, culture is evolving, and you really have to nurture it. And so is capital, by the way. And you cannot accumulate capital and expect it to stick around. Both have to be nurtured, and cultural capital is one form of keeping it, one form of capital that you have to keep nurturing and whatnot. And there are obviously some changes in there. There are obviously some regional aspects of it, especially when you expand globally. But then there are the fundamental aspects that are ingrained in there, and those have to be retained. So we try to do that. If you look at the way we grow in a distributed manner, we take some of our senior employees who have been around with us, say 15, 20 years, and have them lead a particular team or a particular region, and then have them hire locally, and then train them, groom them. And when you do that for 5-10 years, then the local group now becomes stronger. And now there are these corporate cultural aspects that are ingrained, but also there are also going to be subcultures based on the region, based on subtleties and whatnot. But when you do that, what we make sure is the decisions are always made closer to where the problem is. So if there is a problem, the person closest to the problem, who understands the culture, is in the best position to make that decision. And that also drives confidence for that individual, the trust the company has on that individual, that improves the job satisfaction, that contributes back to various other aspects out there. So that is the model, and that is the only way we can scale. You cannot centralize this decision making, and giving the employees the confidence to make that decision is important. And they will make bad decisions, no question about that. But what kind of culture do you have to allow them to make those mistakes, and what are you learning from those mistakes is equally important. So we call these experiments in the company. Say, try to make these mistakes, keep those mistakes smaller, and then learn from it. Don't repeat the mistakes. So that's how we internally say.
We hear a lot about responsibility, social responsibility, and sustainability, and topics around the environment and corporate responsibility in that context. How does Zoho approach this? I mean, what does that look like for your teams?
Well, we don't have a CSR department in the company. You cannot have a separate group responsible for CSR, and then somebody else is responsible for extracting the most from a customer. No, we don't approach it. We don't. That's too much of a siloed thinking. It becomes the responsibility of everyone. And the way we approach CSR is, if some employee is passionate about a topic, passionate about a cause, then we ask the employee, "Are you going to take a lead on this? If you are, then yeah, let's do it." So there is one individual who is passionate about that particular topic and executing towards that. So it is very distributed. The CSR is not centralized. It becomes the responsibility of the individual, and whichever level that individual may be. It might be an employee that just joined, or it could be a senior person that has been around. It doesn't matter. So somebody is passionate about a cause, and it is only apt that that person be in charge of that and let them execute it. So, and it has to be part of the fundamental fabric of the company itself. It cannot be siloed, and so we don't believe in that siloed approach.
In how far? Well, substantiate. Can you bring some examples for that?
Just this morning, I saw some messages from one of our employees in local villages where they're helping with the systems, in this case sewage and restrooms for in a local village. The quality of the villages are not good, especially for pregnant women. The sanitary aspects of it were not satisfactory. Some employee found that to be an issue and said, I'm going to take it up. They pulled together a few people and they took it up. I just saw that message this morning. So that's a simple example out there. But then there are various other examples from various regions out there where when an employee is passionate about a particular topic, just jump in, help them out.
I think we have an audience question that we were going to get up there. Yeah, here we go. So from Christy, what happens when the CSR requires a skill that person doesn't have?
They basically figure out a way to develop that skill, learn that skill and whatnot. There are cases where they are interested in, say, attending a community college to learn that. Well, we'll have them do it or do some other, figure out other ways to do it. We'll help them out. And it cannot be processized. It has to be contextual, and it has to make sense for that particular context. And based on that, the respective manager that is closest to that employee will discuss with that person. They know the tendencies of that particular person, and then executes that.
Good one.
That is a good one.
Christy's on the roll.
Oh yeah.
It's a there are things you can, as Steve Jobs said, you can only connect the dots looking back. You cannot connect the dots looking forward. If you believe something is good, you figure out that that's a good initiative. You invest in it. If you don't get anything out of it, that's perfectly fine. And if it doesn't go anywhere, that's perfectly fine. But as you move forward, it'll lead to some insights typically. And looking back, you will be glad that you've gone down that path. And a lot of our initiatives come that way. Zoho itself came that way. Prior to Zoho, we are doing some other stuff, including serving optical companies. We said there is something here. Let's figure it out. And that curiosity to try something new, whether it is in CSR or whether it is elsewhere, is part of the culture.
Is that a practical application of what you said a little earlier? Let me read it. Don't capture capital, but create capital.
You're creating capital and you're creating the know-how in there. And in this case, when somebody is passionate about it, they will figure it out. They will learn, and they will basically increase the quality of life of the surrounding people. And we do that. We do that in our Austin farm. We said they're going to build let's say a fence. And we said we hired a couple of people who did not know how to build a fence. We started with a few experiments, and now they figured out how to build a fence. But the thing is, now building that fence and going through that, they have built a skill set to build it, and now they are earning a lot more than they were earning earlier. That part of that capital building is that experience, and all of that is part of it. And that applies not just in software, in every form out there. And we're trying to figure out some aspects as we go.
A little follow-up there. How if it becomes time critical? I mean, defense obviously is not necessarily time critical, but
it could be.
How do you deal with that? If you just don't have the time to or do think that you don't have enough time to build it up?
There is a temporary measure you take as when something comes up as a time critical, and you make sure that some aspects of it are immediately addressed, but for the long run you build the capital. One example is say security. It is a time critical. If there is a security issue, you cannot say I'm going to take 6 months to build that capital and then fix the security issue. No, you address the security issue first, and then make sure that you have the capital that you build up to address that in the long run basis. So that's how we approach it.
Okay, so now when listening to all this, and you already said that the duration of companies or the lifespan of companies is deteriorating, or in particular also the lifespan of companies of top 100 companies, them staying top 100 gets shorter and shorter in time. So what do you think are key reasons for companies first to get into this situation and becoming a top company and then staying there for prolonged times?
I think it's the valuing the real capital and not the representation or the derivative of the capital, which is money and financial aspect of it. I think you're passionate or actually obsessed about something like a market capitalization, which is the derivative of the real capital. So in the process, we forgot what real capital is. And as companies tend to try to focus on real capital, I believe the longevity will automatically be taken care of. So yeah, what we try to do is focus on that real capital, not worry about market capitalization, or are you a unicorn or a decacorn or whatever that means. But so end of the day, it comes down to focusing on the real capital and not worrying about the rest. I think that will help the cause. If you look at, there are a lot of even TV channels focusing on the growth and the market caps of companies and whatnot on a full-time basis. But there are not a lot of people who are talking about what companies that have been around for 100 plus years, 50 plus years are doing, who are the ones building the real capital and highlighting those. If anything, we have to learn the lessons from those unmeasurables, and instead of focusing on just the measurables part. Just because something is measurable doesn't mean what you're measuring is valuable. And we fall into that trap as a society. There are a lot of other aspects of it where you can't put a number on it, and those are the ones that we have to learn from, and we try to learn from such companies that have been executing this for several decades and centuries.
Is there something, because obviously this culture permeates everything that you do, and I know you also help bring people in that don't know the business and educate them and build that team that way. But what about downstream? Like, one of the you hear people talk about ecosystem, and I know you guys have partners, but that's not really where I was going. It's more like what about other companies that, or ideas even, that your employees or other people involved in Zoho have, and then are you guys helping those entrepreneurial efforts, and how do you treat that?
We do, and we generally look at various companies whose founders' values and the thought process aligns with our thought process, and we in some cases we do invest in them. But again, when we invest in such companies, we are not a typical investor where you're expecting returns in there. We are basically going there, helping them out to build the capital, the real capital in there, and there are some initiatives that require such investments. In such cases, we are doing that to build up that real capital.
Okay, I guess also for the sake of time and the new outro that's coming soon. So that's
exciting.
That wasn't only exciting from an intro and outro perspective, but the whole discussion was quite exciting. So it's what we had today. So I normally said you survived the hot seat, but actually I'd say you lit the seat. So
interesting.
So thanks for that, Raju. That was great. So to the audience, so if you have if you think you have what it takes to compete Raju in lighting the seat, let's know now. So, and we'd love to hear from you. This is what we have for today. So thanks so much for being with us, to Raju and the audience. Great questions also. And I'm Thomas Wieberneit.
And I'm Michael Fauscette. So tune in next time for different faces, different topics, different perspectives as we put somebody else in the hot seat, or maybe now we're going to get somebody else to like the hot seat. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.